Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2024 Kia Niro, we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver. Before we do that though, let's take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to be the right hitch for you. So right off the bat, I want to address probably the biggest question we get asked in regards to these vehicles. And it seems like there's a lot of confusion around this, or uncertainty rather. But with that said, a lot of people are going to wonder, what submodels is this hitch going to work with? All right, so it'll work with all of them, actually. So if you got just a standard Niro, it'll work. If you got the Niro EV, it'll work. Or if you got the plug-in hybrid EV like we do here today, it'll work with that as well. So probably your best bet or your safest bet when it comes to picking out a hitch, regardless on what submodel you have. I do think it's really convenient that this hitch is going to work with all those different submodels, and I say that because this would be the hitch that I would personally choose anyway, regardless of that. And one of the reasons I say that is because I think it looks good. For the most part, it's going to be completely hidden. You're really just going to see the receiver tube opening, and it sits up nice and tight against the bottom of the vehicle, which definitely a good thing. On a car like this, that's going to be pretty close to the ground. Buy a little more ground clearance there. And it's a Class 3 hitch. So that means it has a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, which is a super common size. And there's a ton of different accessories that are going to work with this. It is going to use that standard 5/8 pin and clip. Keep in mind though, hitch doesn't come included with one. If you need one, not a big deal. You can always grab it here at eTrailer. And the safety chain openings there are loop style, easy to get to, and plenty large enough to allow you to use just about any size hook that your trailer might have on it. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, it's going to have a 200-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, and that's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So that's perfect for those 1 and 2 bike racks, maybe even carry 3 or 4, just kind of depends on how heavy everything is, to give you an example there. And as far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 2,000 pounds, or the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So that is the weight of your trailer, plus anything you might have in or on it. Now, I do always like to recommend, it's always a good idea just to grab your Kia's owner's manual. That way you can check in there and make sure that your Niro can handle that much weight safely. We'll go ahead and grab a couple of measurements now. And these will help you figure out what type of accessories are going to work best. So if you go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, taking into account the ramps or lift that we're parked on here, that's going to be about 12.5 inches. So if you can get an accessory that has a rise in the shank, probably be better off, buy a little more ground clearance back here. And if we go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 3 inches, which is really good actually. So you shouldn't run into too many issues here, but if need be, you can use that to help figure out exactly if any of those folding style accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back of your Kia. Other than that, probably your best bet when it comes to a trailer hitch for the Niro. The fact that it works with your standard ones, your plug-in hybrids, your full EVs, you really can't go wrong there. Looks good, has that 2-inch by 2-inch opening, so a lot of stuff will work with it. And that's probably why it's my favorite hitch available for the Niro. When it comes to the installation, it's not that it's really difficult. It uses some factory nuts that are already in the frame, and you thread bolts in, and that's how the hitch is going to get secured. But it's just super tight. There's not a ton of room to work underneath here, especially on our submodel. We have a big box here that's in our way. So it takes a little time. Just stay focused. You should be all right. And depending on what model you have, your installation could just be a little bit different than ours, but just small differences, and hopefully we can get you going in the right direction. But with that said, why don't we go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Kia, and what we're going to do first is get our exhaust lowered down some. It just gives us a lot more room to work. So prior to doing that, I like to take a strap and just run it from side to side. That way we can kind of help support and control how fast and how far we let our exhaust come down. To get these rubber hangers off, you're going to have a total of 3 of them. So one right here on the passenger side, and one that's going to be identical just over on the driver's side, and then one more towards the front, which we'll get to. But I like to spray them down with soapy water and then just grab the exhaust system by hand and kind of work it back and forth. It kind of helps to break everything free. Then you can take a pry bar or big screwdriver and work one end of that hanger off. Here's what the driver's side one looks like. And you don't have a ton of leverage here as far as prying this off, but same concept applies. Get that popped off. Here's where the third one is. We'll do the same thing to get it removed. And then we can loosen up our strap a little bit and let the exhaust come down a little ways. On our driver's side, if you happen to have this canister here, we're going to need to temporarily lower that. So it looks like there's 3 fasteners. One there, one on the side, and then one on this side, which I'll show you in a minute. But got a 12mm socket. Here's that third one, and I think this is all of them, so you want to kind of support this box when you're removing this. You just have these metal tabs here that go around the studs, and so if you just take a flathead screwdriver, you kind of pry them open like that. Once that drops off them studs, it's just going to hang down, but I didn't want all the pressure to be on the hoses and the connectors going to this, and so I helped support it a little bit and then just loosely secured it using a zip tie. You can use a string or a bungee cord, whatever you got. We came over here to the passenger side to show you the attachment points. It's just a lot easier to see since we don't have that big canister over here. But from this point on, whatever we do to this side, the other side is going to be set up the exact same way. But as far as the attachment points go that we're going to be using, there's going to be 2. So that one there, and then one just like it further towards the back of the vehicle. And these are just threaded nuts there. And I do suggest cleaning them out so you can spray some penetrating oil or something in there. Take a tube brush and just work any potential debris out from the holes there. As far as the hardware combination goes, it's going to be the same for all of our attachment points. You're going to have a bolt and a conical tooth washer. Make sure the teeth on the washer are going to face towards the hitch. And when you hold the hitch up, these are just going to thread into those factory weld nuts. Now on some models, when you put the hitch up, you might have a decent sized gap between the hitch and the frame, and if you do, that's what these spacer blocks are for. They go in like that to fill the gap. What I'm thinking about doing is putting the hitch up here and just seeing, where we're at, and if there is a big gap, my thought is you could take one bolt out of the hitch, slide that in there, put the bolt back, take the other one out, then rotate that up and reinstall that bolt. I think that'll probably be our best bet, but we'll see if we even need to bother with these in the first place. If you got someone that can give you a hand with this part, it'll make it a lot easier. But what we need to do with this big box here is get the hitch over it and then kind of get it over the exhaust. Just carefully work everything into position here. It's going to be a tight fit, so expect that. But once we get it up there though, we can take our hardware combination that we talked about and get one of them started. They're definitely kind of tricky to line up, so just take your time. Got all of our hardware in place and hand tight. And like I said, it's definitely a pretty tight fit. In our case, we really had to push up pretty hard on the bottom of the hitch to get everything to line up. And with it supporting itself, you know, I just checked that gap between the hitch and the frame that we talked about. And on one side, spacer won't fit at all. On the other side, you could barely get it in there, but it's super tight. So I think in our case, that gap just isn't big enough to, you know, make using those spacers a necessity. So with that said, I'm going to come back with a 17 millimeter socket now and snug all of our hardware down. Once all the hardware is snug, you want to make sure and come back with a torque wrench and tighten it all down to the amount specified in the instructions. If your vehicle has this black box here on the driver's side, everything's tight, you know, really no way around it. The best tool that I found, and it still didn't work that great, was a ratchet that had a swivel head on it. Just able to kind of manipulate it and move it up in there a little bit better. But if you don't have this, not a huge deal. You know, you can use a regular ratchet or socket or whatever you got. Just be patient, take your time, and you'll get those bolts ring down. Once you're all torqued down, you can go ahead, resecure the box the opposite way that we removed it. That just goes back up into place. Then re-lubricate the exhaust hangers. Just slide them back in. I did the one on the other side already, so that just leaves this one here in the middle. And with it supporting itself, we'll get rid of our strap. And with that done, that will finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2024 Kia Niro.